Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about the 2024 NFL Draft Dynasty rankings, looking at the quarterback position in this particular video. So the draft is over. I've already graded the vast majority of the draft classes, and now we get to the goody stuff, which is where the quarterbacks landed, what their success rates could be. So we're going to take a look at all that stuff. Now, if you're new to the channel, new to the stuff that I do, the link is in the description for a glossary of terms. And also, you can check out other videos on this channel where I got into more in-depth grading of this particular class, especially on my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. But stay tuned until the end of the video where we reveal who the top quarterbacks are in this particular draft class and who you should be investing in heavily. Let's get to it. So starting with number 11, we have Devin Leary, quarterback out of Kentucky. He was, of course, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. Now, his data score as a pocket passer was 17.10 out of 100. His data score as a mobile quarterback was 16.42 out of 100, and his draft status adjusted PEAV score was 7.56, and his MEAV or mobile draft status adjusted score was 8.02. So based on how his pre-draft profile was and where he was drafted, he was significantly below average. Now, the positives for him is he did land in a pretty decent spot. The offensive team talent is 3 out of 32 teams in terms of the overall offensive talent that's on the Ravens. But his competition grade that he's going to be facing is 5 out of 32. So he's going to have a really steep uphill battle to get a starting spot on this roster, and I would not be surprised if he was on another team in a couple years, based on his overall data. He doesn't really fit what the Ravens do offensively. Again, unless they're going in a different direction, he's not really a mobile quarterback in terms of like a Lamar Jackson, or that in that sense. So he's just kind of an odd pick, if you will. But overall, again, backup slash reserve, I don't really think he's worth investing in dynasty situations at all. And I think you should kind of fade him a little bit. And of course, we get to number 10, which is Joe Milton III. He, of course, went to the New England Patriots late. His pocket passer data score was 25.48. He had a much better mobile quarterback score, 42.02. Draft status 15.73, draft status for MEAV 26.78, and offensive team grade 23 out of 32. The Patriots don't have a ton of offensive talent in terms of the every position from the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end position. Competition grade is 31 out of 32, so it is pretty weak in terms of the competition on the Patriots, and a lot of that is because of, well, they have a rookie quarterback. They don't really have established starters there. So he could rise to the top, although he's going to be facing Drake May. I don't think he's going to take the job from Drake May. I really don't. But in terms of his data, the video that I made, he did have a similar profile to Colin Kaepernick. Now, I don't think this is the team that could really turn him into a Colin Kaepernick-like prospect. But overall, I don't like the spot. I think he's more so a backup slash reserve. So again, I don't really think he's worth investing in dynasty drafts at all. So that's just kind of is what it is with him. Of course, we get to number 9 on this list, which is Michael Pratt, the quarterback who was drafted by the Green Bay Packers. His pocket passer or PEAV score was 46.09. His mobile quarterback score is 59.68. Draft status is 19.06. Draft status adjusted MEAV score is 27.99. Offensive talent grade for the Packers is 22 out of 32. Some of that is because of the quarterback situation, and some of that is also because the offensive line kind of needs a little bit of retooling. There is a lot of wide receiver talent that's there on the Packers, so I'm not denying that. But again, there are some things that kind of need to improve there. But overall projection for him would be a backup slash reserve. I don't really see Michael Pratt beating out Jordan Love at all. If it did happen, you're looking at sort of an Andy Dalton-like prospect, which I don't really think is what you want in terms of long-term success. So I don't really see him winning the job here. So overall, I think you kind of have to fade him as well. Then, of course, we get to number 8 on this list, which is Jordan Travis. He went to the New York Jets. His pocket passer score was 38.39. His mobile quarterback score was 54.36. Draft status adjusted pocket score was 26. His draft status adjusted MEAV score is 41.15. The offensive talent grade for the Jets is really good. It's 10 out of 32. So in terms of the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, all that stuff, there's a lot of skill position talent there to be taken advantage of. But the competition grade is 26 out of 32, which again kind of deals with Aaron Rodgers' situation. So uh, injuries could happen, and you could see Jordan Travis being worth a selection in your dynasty drafts. It's sort of a handcuff to Aaron Rodgers. Long term wise, I don't see Jordan Travis as a long term option in terms of his data because he's an older project kind of quarterback, and unlike a guy like Jordan Love, who's younger, where you had more time to kind of develop him, Travis he has a long resume in terms of his ability, and he hasn't really gotten better in terms of his overall passing efficiency at a really high level. So I do like him. I think this is a good spot. I think he's worth handcuffing. If you have Aaron Rodgers in your dynasty drafts, I think he is worth handcuffing because there is a lot of offensive talent there. It's a similar situation to Jordan Love. It's just he wasn't drafted as high as Jordan Love. But again, I don't think he has the same sort of upside as Jordan Love does. But I think interesting selection here for the Jets, and I think if you're thinking about selecting him, you're selecting him to kind of be a handcuff to Aaron Rodgers, who has shown that he can be injured. He's human. He's human. So there could be something there if that happens, and Jordan Travis does get starts because they have a lot of offensive talent on the Jets. So this was actually an interesting spot for him to land. Then, of course, we get to number 7 on this list, which is Spencer Rattler. His pocket passer score was 64.78. His mobile score was 64.89. Draft status adjusted PEAV was 52. The draft status adjusted MEAV was 52. His offensive talent grade is 27 out of 32. The Saints do not have a lot of young offensive talent. They do have good players here and there, but they're older. And they really need some players to kind of step up to kind of boost things over there. But so far, the established talent they have on offense is not the best. The competition grade is 23 out of 32. A lot of that is because even though Derek Carr is an effective quarterback, you might have an injury here or there, and then bang, you're in the fold. Or if Derek Carr's play declines and doesn't have that great of a year, I think you might see Spencer Rattler potentially getting in position to become a starter. I think on the low end for Rattler, you're looking at sort of again, an Andy Dalton kind of low end starter. Daniel Jones maybe is kind of what you're looking for here, or what you expect from him. So again, I don't expect him to be like a top 16 quarterback at the NFL level, but if he does end up getting starts, which is a possibility based on his overall data, then you could be getting at least a starter in sort of deep dynasty league. So I think he is worth investment because of that. I think you already have Derek Carr on your team. You should definitely consider getting Spencer Rattler because he could be a good transition piece. I don't think he's going to have the same career as Derek Carr, but that could be something that you could look at and invest in long term. Then, of course, we get to Bo Nix at number 6. His pocket passer score was 50.28 out of 100. His mobile quarterback score was 66.70. Draft status adjusted PEAV is 68.38, and his draft status adjusted MEAV score is 80.18. A lot of people might be going like, why do you have? Because Bo Nix is definitely a player that is in a position where he's kind of tapped to be the guy. Like, why do you have him below Michael Penix Jr.? And here's the main reason: offensive team talent on the Broncos is very low. So based on the data grades that I was able to compile and looking at the roster, and giving them some projection, projecting the rookies' ultimate expectation based on where they were drafted, it's a very weak offensive roster. I do like the narratives that they have about the Broncos. With guys like Audric Estime, of course, Blake Watson. Uh, you know, uh, all those players are interesting. Troy Franklin, of course, is very interesting, but there's also a lot of flaws as well in all those prospects. So I think in terms of like what the vision is, I like the vision. I just think the raw materials that they have for the vision are risky, and you can't expect me to just believe that they're going to hit on every single risky selection that they made and kind of be okay with it. I can't justify that. So I think Bo Nix also is a little overrated in terms of some of the positives about him. I know a lot of people brought up his sack rate. Like, oh, he wasn't sack. He was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in college football. Yeah, you look at the offensive scheme though. A lot of quarterbacks who have that low of a sack rate is usually because of offensive scheme. Kind of helps them out. So again, I think the sack rate is a little overblown in terms of a positive when you actually adjust for the situation he was in college. But that's just kind of how it is. What it is. His competition grade is very good. 29 out of 32. He's not going to have much competition at all to really go up against. Zach Wilson is there, of course. He was traded to them, and I don't see him potentially as a threat. He does have a better data profile compared to Bo Nix, but I don't really view him as a threat, but he could be a threat, which is another thing. So when you draft a quarterback in the draft and you have another quarterback on the roster that legitimately could take your spot, it's a little concerning. And then you add in the offensive talent issues on this team, and I think this is an offense that might really struggle. So again, I hope I'm wrong, but based on the data stuff that I've done, based on the collection of looking at the roster, the offensive pieces, the line, everything, I just don't like this selection here. So I think there's be better investment in Michael Penix Jr. I think Penix Jr. will have access to better offensive line, better skill position, talent, all that kind of stuff. So they tested very similar. Both Nix and Michael Penix Jr. are very similar as prospects. And I think Penix Jr. landed in a better spot than Bo Nix, which is kind of why I'm preferring Penix over Bo Nix in terms of long-term stuff. So short-term, definitely Bo Nix will probably get the start and all that stuff early, but I think it's going to be a very anemic offense to begin with based on the offensive skill talent that they have. So I think you kind of have to fade him a little bit. So again, I think he's still worthy of being drafted in dynasty drafts, but I think there's other quarterbacks you should draft over him because of the situation. Short term wise, I don't think. I think long term wise, Bo Nix may not work out there based on from a data perspective, and I think that's why you have to kind of fade him a little bit. Then, of course, you get to number 5 on this list, which, of course, is Michael Penix Jr. So, based on his pocket passer score, 49.94, 48.24 in terms of his mobile quarterback score, his draft status suggested PEAV was 69.14, MEAV was 69.74 in terms of his, um, other data. And his talent grade is 5 out of 32 in terms of the offensive team talent on the Falcons. So I really like them. I really like this team because of that. I think there's a lot of offensive talent there. The competition grade also is 28 out of 32, and the main reason why is because Kirk Cousins is very old. He's not only is he very old, but even when he's been healthy, he's been sort of a above average quarterback, but not an elite quarterback. He's never really been an elite quarterback at all during his career. I've done other videos about this on this channel about that. So he is good. He's a good prospect, but I think when you look at the overall data, you look at the situation, everything else like that, I think Michael Penix Jr. is in a good spot to take advantage of things. Now, does he have a high bust chance? Yes. His age, all the other factors involved with him are things that are concerning. I know a lot of people are tired of hearing about age, or tired of hearing about all these other things like that, but if you take a look at the age of him as a prospect and you compare him to other prospects drafted in that range over multiple decades, you have a lot of concerns there. So I do understand the people that like Michael Penix Jr. I do understand the people that like his maturity and all this other sort of stuff, but I think overall you have to draft other quarterbacks than him in this particular draft class. If you're just basing it on that, again, I'm not denying the fact that he could have some success in the NFL. Based on his draft status, he should hopefully have success in the NFL. So based on that, you could be seeing him, getting starts and kind of doing his thing. But that doesn't mean that you should draft him over other quarterbacks in this particular draft class that have better data overall. So that's kind of how I view him, and that's how you should draft him. As sort of the 5th best quarterback. If you're trying to get a quarterback, he would be the 5th one you take in terms of dynasty drafts this year. Then, of course, you get to number 4 on this list, which is Drake May. Taking a look at his data, he had a 95.58 pocket passer PEAV score. His mobile quarterback score was 96.94. His draft status adjusted PEAV was 97.58, and his MEAV draft status adjusted was 96.94. The offensive talent grade for the Patriots is 23 out of 32, which is not the best. Competition grade, though, is 31 out of 32. The career projection for him would probably be a Pro Bowler to a starter, but I have him at 4 because of the situation that he landed in. The Patriots do not have a lot of talent on that team offensively, so this is going to be an ugly year. And as some reports have already come out early on May, is that he has a lot to learn. There's a lot of things that he needs to improve upon, and kind of go from there with. So I think May again is very talented, but he's also sort of a stash type of player. You draft him and stash him a little bit. So I think he's not somebody you should draft if you want an immediate starter, because if he does get starts, he's going to be in an offensive system with offensive skill position players that are not really that fantastic. So because of that, I think there's going to be some growing pains. It's going to be ugly. I think the Patriots could be one of the worst offenses in the NFL early on if he's a starter, and it might not get better until a couple of years from now. So those are kind of the issues with him from that perspective. Number 3, we have J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy had a PEAV data score of 98.75. His mobile quarterback score was 98.53. His draft status adjusted PEAV was 97.13. Draft status adjusted MEAV was 98.53. The offensive talent grade for the Minnesota Vikings is 11 out of 32, and the competition grade is 25 out of 32. Career projections all pro to starter. The reason why JJ McCarthy is at 3 versus at 2 or 1, even though he has the best data profile in this particular draft class, is because he's not really a mobile quarterback. He's not a quarterback that is going to be making plays with his legs, and that is going to be points that are not necessarily going to be had for your dynasty roster. So from that perspective, that's why he's number 3. He's really just a pocket passer. Again, there's nothing wrong with being a pocket passer. He could be an exceptional pocket passer. He's somebody that I do see as a quarterback that eventually could be throwing for 4,500, 5,000 yards potentially, and 40 to 50 touchdowns if he actually had a lot of really great talent around him. I mean, that's kind of what the upside is with a guy like J.J. McCarthy from a data perspective. But and he didn't land on a really great offensive team in terms of the talent. So there's a lot of things to like about J.J. McCarthy. It's just that his upside on the Vikings is not necessarily going to be the best fantasy situation. So again, he's somebody who's probably going to end up winning a lot of games, but the stats may not be there for him because of the fact that he's mostly a passer, a pocket passer, that kind of situation. So again, nothing against him. I think the upside potential could be like a Brock Purdy on steroids to a certain extent in terms of his data profile. So I really like him. I like the situation he's going to. It's just that he doesn't have that extra piece that really sets a lot of fantasy quarterbacks apart, which is the legs portion of it. So it's not to say he's not mobile at all. It's just that he's more of a pocket passer for him. So. Then, of course, we get to number 2 on this list, which is Jaden Daniels, quarterback from LSU, who went to the Washington Commanders at number 2. His pocket passer score was 65.57. His mobile quarterback score was 82.33. Draft status adjusted PEAV was 83.36, and mobile adjusted score was 91.98. So he is a 90 percentile quarterback score when you consider him as a mobile quarterback. The offensive team talent on the Washington Commanders is not the best, though, 24 out of 32. And the competition grade is pretty decent in terms of 27 out of 32. The career projection for him would be like a Pro Bowl to starter long term for him. And I think the biggest thing he brings to the table from a dynasty football perspective is he's going to make plays with his legs and his arm. So he's somebody that has that upside of, say, a Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, those other sort of dual threat quarterbacks. I don't expect him to throw for like 4,000 yards or anything crazy like that. I do expect him to maybe throw for maybe 3,000, 36,000 yards a season, and then have that additional stuff with his legs, with his ability as a runner. So those are things that I think really kind of set him apart compared to other quarterbacks. He does have a really high sack rate, so his career sack rate was in the 30 percentile range. So in the same way of a Lamar Jackson and a Cam Newton, I think the offense is not going to be as on time as you would like because of that. I don't really want to even really compare him to RG3 because I don't think he's the same um, in the same vein. I mean, he's a similar quarterback, of course, but I think RG3 was a much more impressive prospect coming out than Jaden Daniels from a data perspective. But I think that's kind of what you're looking at with him. You're looking at a quarterback that has that mobile ability, which is really what separates him from the other quarterbacks. So even though a guy like uh, McCarthy has the potential to be like a Hall of Fame or all, I wouldn't say Hall of Fame, but all pro, Pro Bowl quarterback as a passer, I think Jaden Daniels gives you more value from a fantasy perspective because of his mobile ability. So that is kind of why what you're drafting him for. Now, is he a risky prospect? Yeah, he is. He carries more risk than a lot of other quarterbacks in this particular draft class. But I think in terms of the upside potential with him and the fact that he is well developed, I think he'll start quickly and give you a lot of fantasy success early. So that from that perspective, that's why you would have to select him. So compared to the other quarterbacks in this draft class, he's the one that again has that unique profile to really help him out overall. And then the number one quarterback in dynasty rookie drafts that you should be taking at number one, even in new leagues, I think you should definitely consider taking Caleb Williams number one, because simply this, his pocket passer score was 94.45. His mobile quarterback score is 95.70. His draft status adjusted scores are 98.49 for the pocket passer draft adjusted score, and then 98.94 in terms of the mobile quarterback score. His offensive team talent is 4 out of 32, and his competition rank is 32 out of 32, with a career projection of All Pro to starter. I love this situation for Caleb Williams because he is going to a team that has a decent offensive line. He's going to a team that has probably the best wide receiver core in the NFL in terms of DJ Moore, and of course they drafted Roma Dunze, and then of course you have Keenan Allen. I mean, DJ Moore is the number one wide receiver on anybody's team. Keenan Allen is the number one wide receiver on anyone's team as well. And of course, Roma Dunze was projected as a potential one. So, based on the offensive talent alone that he has access to on this particular team, he's going to have everything he needs to be successful early on. And then, of course, you take into account his other talent and ability. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year for him, obviously, as a rookie, but he could probably be one of the best rookie quarterbacks that we've seen in a long time in terms of their fantasy projections. So I think I think the sky's the limit for this guy, and I think he went to the perfect situation, the perfect team, and you just have to draft him. He's going to give you extra stuff as well with his legs. I'm not going to be crazy and expect him to have like 800, 900 yards, but he is going to be that guy that gives you like 400 yards around that range possibly. And there's really a lot to like about this situation. So again, Caleb Williams would be the number one quarterback for dynasty purposes. And I think even in new leagues, new start leagues, I think you definitely would consider taking him number one over other quarterbacks because he has that upside potential. He's young, he's super talented, he went to a perfect situation, and again, the sky is the limit with this guy. So, with all this stuff out of the way, I thank you guys so much for watching. Check out my other stuff at patreon.com/jcoburn. Also, consider checking out my X, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.